I'm Elizabeth Hansen with the Institute for International Business and Center for International Business Education and Research here at CU Denver. At the IIB Cyber, we promote the advanced study and teaching of international business, international studies, and related fields. Through the IIB and Cyber, we are happy to introduce this Career Spotlight series. This series is intended to be a resource for students to learn more about the opportunities and various careers in international business. I'm excited to introduce Sandi Moilanen, the Vice President of Operations at World Trade Center Denver. Hi, Sandi.
Hello.
We're happy to have you here. And I would love to start with a little bit about your academic background and how you decided to go into international business.
Sure. So I am a graduate of the MS, IB, and dual MBA from the University of Colorado at Denver Business School. That was back in the year 2002 is when I received those degrees. Before that, my undergraduate studies was from a private liberal arts University of Puget Sound in Tacoma, Washington, with a very broad background of foreign languages and international affairs. I studied the practical language of German, not very practical, in today's the United States. How I got into international business was probably through my curiosity of global markets, global trade, and again, global cultures and the differences between each culture, and the realization that innovation has really come about, in my opinion, through trade. That exchange of ideas and that exchange of ways to do things really fascinated me. I was very curious about that. So I always wiggled my way into every job I've ever had in leaning more towards those global customers, serving global customers, and serving, again, trying to reach those international markets. So how's that?
Great, thank you. If you could talk a little about your career path and how you came to be in the position you have now.
Sure. I, right out of my undergraduate program, I did land a job where I was helping an apparel company source their goods in international markets. So I was part of what they called at that point the sourcing team. Today, you'd call that probably more global supply chain support. So what we did was our designers would come up with great designs. We'd have to go find the relationship with a factory that could fulfill that certain design. So generally, I was working with Southeast Asian markets, India, Philippines. We weren't doing much in China, even back in the late 1990s. Because China was becoming too expensive even in the apparel industry. So we were moving out of China in the late 90s and moving into places like Vietnam, Mongolia, Philippines, India, Sri Lanka, places like that. So that's generally where I was building relationships or continuing really relationships with factories. From there, from the sourcing side, we were leveraging some of those relationships we were making with vendors, if you will. Those factories were technically our vendors. They were making things on behalf of us. And then we were leveraging those relationships and turning around and trying to find more selling relationships, distribution partners throughout some of those same markets, or if they had relationships in other markets where we wanted to actually sell our items, they would be helping us with that as well. So I got to do a little bit of both of the, again, more supply chain, sourcing type of activity for an apparel company, and also the building out of a distribution network and more of the sales side of things.
So your position now is kind of helping other businesses do the same.
Exactly. So after really working about a decade in apparel manufacturing, I completely changed career paths and started working for the public sector. So I ended up working for the state of Colorado as part of their economic development team, really working with international programs. So we were doing a lot of what we called export promotion programs. and inward foreign investment attraction, trying to market Colorado as the best place in the United States to do business and why you should locate in the United States, in Colorado. So on the export promotion side, yes, we were doing exactly those very similar things that I was doing in the apparel industry for Colorado-based companies that wanted to start really growing their bottom line locally through exporting their products and services around the world, trying to help them identify buyers, trying to help them identify good markets to go into, supporting them generally with government financing or financial incentive programs that we would have to get them to grow and sell their products overseas, because that brought in new wealth to Colorado, right? So when you have somebody buying something from outside of Colorado's borders, that money is brand new to our economy when they pay your invoice. So that was what I was focusing on, with a little bit of, again, showcasing Colorado and the industries of Colorado and why other international companies are finding really Colorado a location to do business. So I spent about a decade doing that as well before moving over to now a nonprofit, doing very similar things, helping our international business community here, or our business community here, understand the nuances of selling and buying outside the United States. So very similar activities.
Mm-hmm. So what would you say the biggest benefits and challenges are of working for a nonprofit versus the private sector?
I would say probably number one is resources. Human resources. We generally don't have teams larger. We don't have a large team. Right now we are a team of 8 people, generally with 3 interns at a time. So that takes us up to 11 people, and trying to do a lot of activity in, again, sharing our knowledge of international business practices, that knowledge, that expertise, connecting our network to each other. There's a lot of activity that we do around making connections within our local business community to make sure you are working with experts here locally. You don't have to go to places like Chicago or New York to get an expert in international trade. We've got great attorneys and logistics and accounting firms that all operate here in Denver. You don't have to, and banks that are very familiar with international business concepts. So it's making those connections. And then kind of a third area that the World Trade Center has recently really gone into is actually serving companies with their individual needs with a consulting practice. So really leveraging the experts in our network and trying to solve individual problems for companies. So that does require resources. And sometimes as a nonprofit, our mandate, our mission really is to build our international business communities savvy in doing international transactions. We are not profit driven, so sometimes then we don't necessarily always have the resources to do everything that we possibly want to do. So I would say that's probably the biggest difference. And then the other biggest difference between the non-profit sector and the public sector, at least in my experience, has been the nonprofit tends to be very, very mission driven versus profit driven. And I don't want to say every corporate isn't about a mission as well, but we don't have, as a nonprofit, we don't have the shareholders really demanding us to create more wealth, and they really let us focus on our mission of helping our community, building our international business community without the pressure of, you must make money in this as well. So that's the biggest difference.
Right. So in building that international community, I was wondering if, with fluctuations in policy surrounding trade, if your job duties tend to change with those.
Absolutely. Both more demand and some less demand too. It's kind of funny. So when policies change around trade, and right now, and not just in the United States, but several foreign markets as well, there's definitely more of a nationalistic tone. By U.S. We need to make things more in the United States. So there's policies around that. So of course, this, some of the tools that the United States that we've used is increasing tariff rates. So making things more expensive for the US purchaser when you buy it from a different country, right? So everybody's kind of probably following the China trade war. So when we tack on these heavy Chinese tariffs or Chinese products that are coming into the US, that then supposedly is making our US manufacturers more efficient. So that creates a little bit of demand for our services because those importers or current importers have to figure out how to navigate those new policy changes. So there's always questions around that. And, actually a help desk call that just came in yesterday. So we operate a help desk. You can call up and try to get assistance directly from our help desk. A food manufacturer that purchases all his glass bottles from China, which China is known in the world for their glass bottles. They've really invested in that industry. And pretty much every supplier buys their own glass jars and glass bottling from China. That's just the way it is. So the US glass manufacturer lobby was successful in lobbying anti-dumping tariff on Chinese glass bottles. So I think right now, the gentleman told me yesterday that he is going to pay 238% tariff on his glass bottles that he had purchased. They were on a boat and then the tariffs went into effect. So now he has to pay the tariff rate of 238%. So he wondered, what the heck can I do? So sometimes, I guess, changing trade policy creates demand. It also creates some companies to kind of switch their strategies. And I think we've seen this just, I guess, in my career in almost 30 years of doing international business, that kind of an economic downturn, you'll see people kind of retract and start just serving their local markets. They see changes in some trade policy as a challenge that just is going to have too many headaches, so I'm not going to even bother with that. So again, you start to see things like tariff increases, then you just kind of shut down and not do that international business. So again, kind of sometimes demand, sometimes it causes people to kind of contract again and really just look inward, which I would say is a very short-sighted strategy on companies' parts. That you really should be looking long-term. And again, the world is a very large marketplace and you don't want to cut yourself out of that.
Right. So it sounds like your day-to-day also can be pretty varied depending on what kind of things people call in with.
Absolutely. I've been in this position for just a little over 4 years now, and I can honestly say I've never had a similar day in the office. So, I could be talking about like glass tariff rates in the morning, and then sitting down and talking with a company, or actually right now we're Zooming with companies, talking about what market they really need to be bringing their refrigerated machine into. They serve the mining market here in the United States. They want to really grow that segment, but are they missing other segments that they need to be looking at? So really working with a very diverse industry, which can be challenging. But again, the key I guess, function that the World Trade Center Denver is really trying to provide is helping our members, our clients, our community really understand the process of international trade. What groups get involved, what government regulations might you need to be worried about, and not just for products that move across border. That's a little easier maybe to visualize trade through products, but we are a knowledge economy and there are several regulations and rules that our companies need to be following. You might not think of a technology company that creates apps as being an international trading company. They might not call themselves that, but if you start to look at things a little closer, you'd start to see that they truly are trading services. So that's always, again, a fun part of my job is seeing people understand that they are part of this global marketplace and they do in fact do international trade.
Right. Thank you. So then speaking to nonprofits more generally, do you think there are any misconceptions about working for nonprofits that you would want a student considering going into this field to be aware of?
That's a really good question, and I've been thinking about that. Probably one misconception is that nonprofits generally don't have resources, which I've already said that sometimes we don't have resources, but it doesn't mean they can't get things done. So maybe a misconception is that lack of resources means lack of knowledge. And I would say any nonprofit that I've worked with throughout my career, that has never been the case. Or that nonprofits are a little bit more or less sophisticated than a corporate competitor, if you will. Nonprofits do compete in the corporate world as well. And I would say from my experience in not only working in a nonprofit, but again, working with other nonprofit associations and things, that's definitely not the case. A lot of people who go into the nonprofit have vast experience in the corporate world and bring some of that sophistication. So that's there, and also that probably nonprofit workers are a little crazy in the fact that they really work very, very hard. I've never worked with a more hardworking team that I work at here in the World Trade Center, and that's amazing. It's also probably the function or the fact that all of us are here for mission. I think all of us truly believe, everybody on staff here at the World Trade Center, that again, trade changes the world. Trade is probably the largest component of what changes humanity for the better, and we all believe that. So working with people that share those deep core values is very rewarding. So nonprofit careers can be extremely rewarding.
Thank you. Would you say that your experience in the corporate world did help with your transition moving into the nonprofit sector?
I'd absolutely say experience both in the private sector and then my public sector days absolutely shaped the way that I see the world, and I bring that experience every day to what I'm doing here at our nonprofit. So yes, I think the corporate experience absolutely helps me connect with clients that are going through this or experiencing similar things that I might have gone through in my experience. So being able to put myself in their shoes and see truly maybe what the opportunity or the problem might be, just because I've been there myself, I think that's beneficial. But not necessarily, you don't have to have those years of corporate to be able to be successful if you choose to start out in the nonprofit sector. I don't think that would, you wouldn't be looked down upon anymore, that sounded bad. You wouldn't be, you could still offer a lot of value, I think, in these jobs at the World Trade Center, for example.
Awesome. So what kind of knowledge, skills, and abilities do you think are the most important for people pursuing careers in nonprofits?
In nonprofits, patience. And I was joking with a former colleague of mine just recently that a nonprofit experience has made us the most resourceful people. We're scrappy, we figure it out, we try to get things done. You have to use a network. You can't do it yourself. So I really do look for that when I look for new teammates, for example, people who have demonstrated that they're able to figure things out. So resourcefulness. I think also what really helps maybe with, or at least in my career path, it's been really helpful for me to be super curious about things. So just that undying need to understand more and more and more, just the curiosity. So then it helps that we deal with global things, because then that feeds my curiosity even more. Every time I have to figure out, truly what kind of documentation is needed to get, Colorado goods into Malaysia. I need to know this now. So now I need to go figure this out and help our companies navigate that. Is is what I think has been helpful in my current position for sure.
Right. Adaptability.
Yeah, definitely in nonprofits, adaptability. But again, I find that a huge advantage. Being a smaller organization, but we're extremely nimble. Again, I worked in a public organization, which was not extremely nimble. It took a lot of layers of sign off on things if we want to change things up. In the corporate world too, sometimes there's layers of bureaucracy as well. So my current role and with my current team, we are able to be much more nimble. And I think that's kind of maybe a surprise that people might not think about. But if something's not working, we can absolutely adapt and see if we put some additional resources or change things up a little bit to see if that would work. And that's kind of fun.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. So now my favorite question, did you have any mentors along the way to your current position? And if so, what did you learn from them?
I absolutely had mentors along the way. And funnily enough, I ended up working for one. I've had several mentors around in my life that generally have been outside my international business focus, which I think always brings a fresh perspective. For if I'm having an issue, to be able to go to have somebody with completely an open mind and not knowing the key players, for example, or the key issues maybe. So just being able to bounce ideas off of people have been really helpful in my life. And then when I say I went to go work for one, the CEO of the World Trade Center Denver has been a mentor of mine when I first met her probably 15 years ago. And then I ended up working with her. And she's been real helpful. She's a very creative person. So she's kind of opened my mind to being a little bit more creative. And I'd like to think that I've influenced her life and being a little bit more organized. And so together we're kind of a yin and yang of our office. So that she's really helped me get out of the safe space. I'm in my safe space and think a little bit bigger and work towards those bigger goals. So mentors have played a big key in my career. I would very much encourage young professionals that I work with to always find that mentor. And again, I have to say it has been nice to have somebody outside my field of expertise to make me explain things a little bit differently. That's been really helpful.
Mm-hmm. So what are the most effective strategies for seeking a position in a nonprofit, would you say?
I would say, especially for nonprofits, again, I'm going to go back to the mission is generally what drives the organization. So if you really want to get involved in a nonprofit, truly understanding what motivates you and what your personal mission is, and then finding those groups that align with that would be a great way to start networking. Be involved in a nonprofit. If you really are motivated by, educational nonprofits, if something really, really moves you and is part and will always be part of your value system, seek out those opportunities to contribute and start to meet who's involved in that industry and who's involved in that nonprofit and start networking there. Generally, nonprofits have that networking side of whatever they're doing in their business. There's always a networking, and we hear it quite a bit, and I'm sure as college students you hear this from every single professional that you are talking to, that networks really, really matter. And I will also say the same thing, that your personal network is very powerful. And when you start to really put yourself out there professionally, you need to be talking to people because they're the ones who will start to connect you to other opportunities and open your eyes to other opportunities. So the network is powerful.
Right. That's good advice. And just kind of to close us out, do you have any other pieces of wisdom you'd like to pass on to our students?
Really get involved and I'm going to, again, go back to the networking side of things. And it is scary as a young professional to put yourself out there and go to established networking events. But, you know, everybody is there to meet new people, to exchange ideas, to learn. And you as, you know, either a young professional or somebody looking to change careers, you have a lot to offer, a new perspective to things. So don't be scared to get out there and meet people, because looking back at my career, looking back at my close professional friends, it's, you know, you gotta put yourself out there to meet those people and tell them about your capabilities, and that's how you know, change jobs, look at different careers, and get in, is through people that know you and know your capabilities. So, you know, just applying to LinkedIn messages and trying to hope that you're going to get a job that way. I'd like to say that that works, but you got to know people. And again, being able to express your capabilities doesn't always come across in your LinkedIn profile. So get out there, meet people.
Right. And thank you for being part of our network and sharing your advice with our students today. It's been really insightful and really helpful.
Well, I appreciate the time being able to chat with my former I would say that it's still my network. You know, again, the CU Business School really helped me get grounded here in Denver. I'm not from Denver. I was a young professional, recently moved to Denver. So the business school really helped me navigate what was going on in Colorado. So I really do appreciate that, and have used that on a daily basis in everything I've done in Denver.
Thanks, and we appreciate you being willing to come back and share all of that with us.
All
and
right.
I hope you have a great rest of your day and your weekend, and thanks again for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.